Without Rust, I think I would still just be in like an early prototype phase, probably messing around with something cursed with like, Monad or C++ or some kind of derivation thereof.
My name is Lori Lorusso, and I am the Director of Outreach for the Rust Foundation. We are here today to interview Brooke Deuson with Trafficking Free Tomorrow.
Yeah. Hey, Lori, as well. I go by Going for Brooke online, and I'm the founder and primary developer on Trafficking Free Tomorrow. We're a 501c3 nonprofit that tries to make anti-trafficking forensic software for law enforcement. I started off with like a pretty bad experience I had in college. At the time, I was actually at the soft science major, which is kind of wild. But after that experience, I was super pissed, and I was like, how does this kind of stuff happen? How does this even go through? So I channeled a lot of that anger into volunteering for law enforcement. And up to that point, I didn't really like I could do some light coding and scripting and things, but that was kind of where I like taught myself, like drew the rest of the owl and kind of got to the point where I could make a viable program, which worked great. And I could do amazing things there as long as it never left my machine because it was all Python. There's no way to actually ship the stuff. At the same time, there's this little language called Rust that was coming out. And I thought, wow, this is a really great way that as a solo developer, I can create something that works on any machine that can be infinitely faster and that doesn't take a ton of overhead or maintenance. Because we're deploying to like legacy machines here. These are not like the most advanced enterprise environments. There's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of security requirements. They're very sensitive and they're used to highly custom software. So I was like, what can I do and what can I make that's free and that runs everywhere? Maybe not like the best software, not like the, oh my gosh, AI and this and that, just what's like the Toyota Corolla or like, the VW bug version of solving this problem that I can put out there and just have that wrap around the world and create positive change. And Rust was the only way that I found I could do that.
So I find it very interesting. You went from Python to Rust and you found it like, how did you find it? Because I think a lot of developers are initially very cautious and hesitant because they feel like Rust is too hard, it's too complex, and they're not going to get it.
I like to say like the compiler is a cruel mistress. Like it's very strict and it's very rough with you, but once you follow its rules and you get that rule set, then it really goes well for you. And I think one of my advantages was that I hadn't done very much C or C++, so there wasn't very much unlearning to do. Now, as a downstream effect of that, I feel like all of the code that I write in any language, including Python now, looks like Rust code. Like it's changed the way that I think about development to such the point that anytime I'm not writing Rust, I'm always just like, why is this? Why am I here? Why am I doing this? So I think it was difficult in the beginning, but not as difficult. And I don't know. I think the real difficulty for me, especially, was at the time there wasn't a whole lot to make good on the promise for write once, run anywhere. So actually learning how to ship that stuff, and that was especially rough because there's such a huge server side paradigm now, where if you want to make software, you make a web server. It goes through a browser, like what we're talking through right now. Like the whole world is browser based. And I tell people here in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, oh, I make client side stuff. I make an executable. It's a thing that you download and install on your machine. And the top thing that I get is like, wow, that's insane. And also, yeah, I have no idea how to do that. It's like this lost art that I had to like dig up and like excavate and figure out how to do. And a new language that hasn't been shipped in a ton yet since it is still a bit like younger, even though it's a whole, we had the 10-year anniversary last year, I think that was.
So basically, people just need to just jump in.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was awesome. Or I guess with any programming language or any skill that I try to pick up, I try to make something very simple and push that out. Like I try to solve a problem and solve it for someone, even if that someone's me. I try to make something like solve a problem that I can solve. And that's sort of the litmus test for every library I use, every language that I use. I give myself like 2 weeks. I think in the process of this, I tried 5 or 6 different GUI libraries, different CI/CD libraries, way to build out these executables. And lots of people make these very big claims like, oh, yeah, just give us a little bit of money or just, put in these little variables or do these things. And maybe it's because I didn't understand it. Maybe it's because it was broken. I don't really care. After 2 weeks, if I'm not shipping, then it's not really a good option for me, which is pretty rough, honestly. I said some pretty spicy things at RustConf in my talk about some of the packages and libraries that I'm using. And I'm sure like by now, like definitely, for example, ICE, I said was unmaintained. Now that's actually back to full maintenance and they have great docs. And now I'm kind of looking at it like, wow, maybe I should go back and maybe that'll be my next GUI after I'm done through this. But Yeah, trying to make something and shipping it to someone and letting that be like the final say for whether or not it works or not. Because there's plenty of stuff in my code where it's like embarrassingly inefficient. But it's more efficient than someone going through manually and like, clicking each individual file. It's already saving people thousands of hours and making real world impact, which is cool. So for me as a developer, I look at it and I'm like, "Ugh, this is terrible. Hope no one sees this." But for my users, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like the best thing since sliced bread. And that feels really good.
As a developer, when you are going to choose something, what are the most important things for you to look at? Because you're working with law enforcement, I would assume that you have a much higher bar of entry when you're picking something, specifically in open source, to use in your products.
I think my first thing is how not how easy it is to learn, but how easy is it to migrate away from. There's a lot of times that I look at like if I need to swap this out, if this crate totally dies, if there's some kind of maintainer thing, or maybe some dependency has some giant bug, and that bug isn't really important, but the CVE is scare enough that government, someone higher up goes, no more any of this anywhere, and that's how we're going to stop the bad guys from getting into our systems. Then the whole project's dead in the water if that happens. So, like, how easy is to change out? It's like my first thing that I think about there. The next thing is that I look at who's on the project. I kind of look at the developers, or now I just ask ChatGPT because they can look the stuff up a lot faster. But I'm like, what are there other things that are there going? Is this crate sponsored? Does it have a lot of momentum? Is it going to keep going? Because if I do all the work to integrate it and then it kind of starts falling apart, or some of the PR start falling behind, that kind of becomes an issue. And especially I look at if they have a way, can I buy them a coffee? Can I, donate a few things for their time and be like, hey, I'd really like to support this initiative. This is something that I think is cool. I'd at least like to get you some snacks or something. Maybe you look at my PRs, but is there some kind of way there, organizationally to keep that moving? And the next thing is documentation. And by documentation, I mean a good quick start, which is just how do I get the to-do list app? How do I get a checklist thing? How do I just like make something, but make something kind of backpedaling or echoing back to where we were earlier with being able to ship stuff. Doesn't mean like doing hello world and it works on my machine. It means like make something, compile it, ship it, and then bring it up on my gaming PC or something. And once it comes up there, then I'm like, now we're cooking with gas. This is cool. Because, if it doesn't compile, then who cares?
I think it's funny. I was like, can we get through a conversation without mentioning AI? But I love how you're using ChatGPT to do the research for you on open source projects to see if they're viable and hit your criteria. Like, I like that. You're not talking about using in what you're doing, but you're talking about how to make what you're doing faster and more efficient so that you find the right crates and other projects that work. And I like how you don't just have like a plan B, like that you're thinking outside of the box. And I wonder if this is something that a lot of other developers think about, right? Like, are they having a plan B, a plan C? Are they thinking about the interchangeability of what they're building, specifically with all of the supply chain security, like threats out there and the CVs that are coming all the time? Like, so I wonder if that is due to the nature of the business that you're in, or is that just a Brooke-ism?
I think some of it's nature of the business. Like it might take me 6 months to get the first version into a customer's site. It might not ever be updated again after that. That just might be how that goes. Like once they have it, then there's very little impetus. Oh, there's this giant security vulnerability. Well, they have a million other things on their plate, and there's a lot of people it has to go through to get things updated in the first place. I think that developers often think about these things a little bit, but it's tough, especially in a business context. You got the product manager who's like, on top of you for, oh, you need to do this, 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 and this. And then your manager is like, go faster, make number go up. And the CEO, if you're at a startup, is definitely like, we need to get this prototype out yesterday. We need to ship this to the customer. So there's a lot of external pressure to be thinking differently, about these things. And also, if you have more people, a lot of these are smaller problems. Part of my development style is having a consistent way that I implement things, even if it's not efficient, just because following the same lines of thought means that whenever something breaks, because I do things consistently, it's also really easy to go in and fix. It also means like I write documentation for me, which whenever I've worked in professional context, people say that they like that as well. But having a lot of comments, a lot of things like that, probably more comments in docs than most people have, because I can go to any point in my code and I can look right at it and know exactly what's going on without having to like backtrace. And that takes time up front. So I feel like it pays off and I feel like I'm biased, but sometimes it still keeps me up at night. I wonder, could I have just taken a bunch of shortcuts, pushed out a smaller, like lesser prototype, and would that have paid off? Or maybe like it would have just totally, fallen over on itself. I take a little early on in development to set good foundations for things. And I don't do like the one third of the way. I had this tweet a few days ago about a lot of people about they get 30% or 45%, and all the technical debt builds up to such the point they have to just scrap it and start over. I don't really do that, so maybe it works out, but I'm also my biggest fan. So, you know, maybe that's not true.
That's great that you're your biggest fan. I think you're the CEO of the company, so you set the standard for which you want to work. And I think that that is brilliant for you to say, I want to do all the heavy lifting up front so that when something does happen, I already have backups in place. I know where I can go. My documentation is solid. If I can't remember what I did, I've got it all lined up. Like, I'm good. That's awesome. It'd be
Yeah.
nice if some other people thought the same way. I think I think, open source is like the wild, wild west back then, which why not? It was fun, it was exciting. And now we're sort of at that precipice where it's like, oh yeah, we left some holes. Okay, cool. But now you've got this whole security thing coming in. So you've got a whole bunch of other developers that are like, sweet, I want to find those holes. I want to like not exploit them. I want to protect them. And so it's just a really interesting give and take. And I like the way that you formulate how you do your business. It's getting it done up front, making sure if it not taking the shortcuts.
That's what's so cool about Rust with this kind of dovetailing into what you said about the documentation and the, consistent way of doing things. Rust strictness, and especially with sort of fearless refactoring, I think is something that people don't talk about enough. The ergonomics are really good. Like I can go in and change a core struct that's passed around between multiple, 5 or 6 different threads. Sometimes it's red in the GUI. Sometimes it goes up here, it goes into a little database thing. Like a million different things are happening. If I was an object in Java, like I would change it. And even after 5 or 6 unit tests passing, I'd still be like, yeah, I don't know. But for Rust, I can have the balls to go in and just, IDE, just command R refactor, go for it, do Rust check, not even the full run. And if it compiles, everything's still okay. And I think that's like the only language where I can have that level of trust, and being able to go in and make those quick changes for bug fixes for everything is awesome. And I think that that costs a lot up front, especially with learning the language. But back to momentum, you don't get this little spike where you move super fast in the beginning and then you have to hire more and more people. Like with Python projects, I think you can do a lot early on really quick. But once you get over 5,000 lines, especially 10,000 lines, you have to bring on more and more people because there's just so much stuff and it's so loosey goosey with how it does stuff. Whereas with Rust, you might start off a little slower on development, but it's a nice, even linear amount of work that you can plan for. So you might have to tell your CEO it's going to be 2 weeks instead of 1 week, but you can be really certain about that deadline. So I see a future in which Rust is also a great way to align with, stakeholder value and business objectives and all those other, words.
It's so interesting to hear it from this vantage point because I think, most people, to your point, talk about Rust being the most memory safe language, but you're just saying, like, at the onset, building from the beginning, like, it's power. It's putting power in your hands because you can make all of these snap changes without having to have a team behind you to make sure all your, I's are dotted and T's are checked or crossed. I feel like you have another talk in you right there. Talk about that.
I feel really strongly. It's like not only is it's a cruel mistress, but to extend the analogy, it's a jealous lover that rewards loyalty. So whenever I do with the Rust, I always look for packages that are just pure Rust packages. Because if it's a pure Rust package, it probably compiles to everything, And like if there's an issue in the future, if I need to go back and change it, well, it's in Rust, and I can go back and I can patch that myself. There's always some way to do it. And if it's done with like the documentation and like Rust way of doing things becomes like a high trust source just as much as the language is high trust.
I'm absolutely in love with your development process. I think, the fact that you're so keen on Rust and want to use Rust packages because all of the things that make Rust powerful make you more powerful in what you're doing is great. But Let's take a step aside from the language and talk about the Rust Foundation. What made you decide to have Trafficking Free Tomorrow want to become an associate member?
I think there's a big opportunity here with some of our open source offerings coming up to have, more workforce, more contributors coming in. And I think being able to advertise through that and be like, hey, if you want to get your hands on Rust, if you want to try something, if you want to be extra weird like me and try something in the public sector, then here's a way to get started with that. I think it's also a good way to highlight this really strange use case that I find myself in. Like, I think when most people think Rust, they're like, okay, we're going to wrap this with Pio 3. It's going to be like a super efficient thing on the back end. We have this C++ implementation that we need to speed up, or this library we need to convert over, or this new thing we need to write, or maybe it's a bit, even seen some people over at the Eurorust conference talking about using Swift bindings and putting it inside of applications for more energy saving on a phone. These are more the things we think about with Rust, or especially the embedded folks. And this application for being able to deploy to legacy machines, deploy to Windows NT, I mean, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that is sort of this interesting edge case that I think hasn't really been brought to light in the Rust world yet. And it's especially weird because you're essentially writing a full scale client side application in a low level language. But is it really low level with all the ergonomic stuff that I mentioned earlier, with all of these simplicities, with this consistency and with the correctness? And there's like, the opinionation, there's a right way to do things. It's hard to call it low level in some ways because without making abstractions, I can just trust that the code I've already written after refactored and after changes still works. There's entire chunks of my Rust projects I haven't looked at for more than 6 months or so, and I don't really need to. Sometimes the refactors change it. Sometimes I have to go in and update the comments, and I go in there, look at the commit signature on Git lins, and I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be rough. And I go and I change it, and there's no problem at all. It's wild.
I met you at RustConf, and I found your talk as a non-technical person. I found it absolutely fascinating based on what you just said, right? Going into these legacy systems in the public sector, and then the basis for the give us the 30, 60-second pitch on what Trafficking Free Tomorrow does for law enforcement.
Trafficking Free Tomorrow provides baseline forensic tools that can deploy to the hardware that law enforcement already has. It doesn't try to be the best implementation, although that is feedback that we get sometimes. But it does try to be something that's accessible, something that can provide a baseline, and especially a baseline communication standard in a world where there are a number of large forensic companies, but no one's focusing on the smaller departments, the rural areas, the people who are actually on the front lines of the trafficking fight. And that's what we're trying to deliver to. And we think that software is, of course, a very high leverage way that you can affect that change. High leverage usually means scale, and scale usually means Kubernetes backend solution. We already tried that. So now scaling means going through thin clients, going through something with a spinning platter and 4 gigs of RAM. And that bet seems to be paying off.
What does your software do for a user?
It puts things into Excel, which I think describes a lot of really valuable business software out there. If you can get it into a spreadsheet, you've made something valuable to someone, which sounds a bit boring, but it saves a ton of time, especially with, people, generally government workers have maybe, 30, 40-hour work week or so. Once you fill those hours, you fulfill your obligation. And if you spend most of it just waiting for, Windows update or something else to work, then that's a lot of lost time. Another piece that comes into this is with forensic integrity. Whenever you put a trafficker on the stand, he tends to have a very well-funded defense counsel because he's got lots of money from his illicit activities. He can use that in his defense. So you're up against a very well-paid defense team, and something that they can do is that they can nitpick the validity of your evidence. And we have things just like if you have a physical piece of evidence, say like a knife found at a crime scene, we've all seen like, the TV cop shows and stuff wherever they bag it and they tag it and they put a little number on it and then they take it and they put it in a locker. And you can't just walk into court and be like, here's the knife. It's like, well, maybe you just bought that at Walmart right before you came here. How do we know that that's actually what we're talking about here? The same thing applies to files and the same thing with digital evidence. There has to be a chain of custody, it's called. So making it so there's a strong change of custody of forensic caches along the way is a really simple but really high impact way that we're trying to fix that problem right now without making that cost like $250,000 or to roll it into some other giant sales package. The necessities of sales and the necessities of having a paid product mean that you basically make something that doesn't work, especially within the government contracting and procurement space.
I just want to see you on an episode of Law and Order SVU, like on the stand on what you do. Because I think to your point, yeah, we're used to like the bag it and tag it, and then like, oh no, it went missing. And what you're doing is on such a meta level. And like you said, put things in an Excel spreadsheet so it's clear, easy to read, saves time, and it's efficient. And it might not be and I hate using this word when talking about tech, might not be the sexiest thing on the market, but it's to your point, like, wow, like you're saving like time, you're saving lives, you're helping public defenders. I mean, it's just the foundation couldn't be happier to be able to support you and your journey. And I look forward to more things that we can do together to, help elevate like this idea of giving back, working in the public sector in a way where you're fighting the bad guys one Excel spreadsheet at a time, which is amazing. It's amazing. Where do you see, kind of from your vantage point as a user of Rust, where do you see it going in regards to how you're using it in Trafficking Free Tomorrow and just the language in general as an end user? Like, what would you like to see?
I'm really excited to see greater adoption and expansion. I know we have quite a few books out now, which I'm certainly a big consumer of those. Mara Boss's book, Luca Palmieri's book on how to deliver and how to ship. But what I really love are just the random little blogs online. Just like some developer writes a blog about something. This is my experience with something. I feel like that's where I really like learned how to actually ship and make good software. So I'm hoping that as the adoption of Rust continues to grow and people get more experience with it, we'll see more lessons learned in the wild pieces like that. And there'll be more to draw back from the community and more things like what are some things that I can jump over, some obstacles that I can skip, what are some ways to implement or deliver things that would really be helpful in the future, as well as just more like, say, CI/CD platforms, things like Shuttle or maybe some AWS services that would kind of help with this whole shipping thing that I mentioned earlier. So I guess just more ways to be able to ship those pieces. And of course, with the compiler team doing the incredible work that they do, things always get faster. A lot of times I update to the new Rust version and I run my unit tests with my benchmarks and things get a little bit faster. And I run it again and it's still faster. And I'm like, well, I guess I have to conclude that was just the language getting faster all by itself.
I think it's interesting, like memory safety. Like, I don't think we've heard that once today. And that is what kind of I feel like for the broader, market, that's what we heard, with, um, gosh, what was it called? Executive order some kind of numbers, with Biden after SolarWinds saying, okay, like everything should be shifting to Rust because it's the most memory safe language. And I love how you have cherry picked and identified so many other avenues of Rust that people aren't talking about maybe outside of the Rust like language community silo, And so I really look forward again to working with you to help expand on other people's horizons on what we might be missing because we're just in it and we forget that there are people that aren't in it and maybe need a different purview on why they should be.
Glad the strangeness is working out.
Is there any like final thoughts?
I think I'm really excited that Trafficking Free Tomorrow can join and give back to the Rust community. Literally, without Rust, I think I would still just be in like an early prototype phase, probably messing around with something cursed with like, Monad or C++ or some kind of derivation thereof, and maybe dealing with memory bugs or dealing with weird crashes, and certainly not nearly having as much fun. So I'm excited for TFT to give back to that and try to strengthen the ecosystem overall.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys haven't checked out the website yet, check out Trafficking Free Tomorrow. There's ways that you can contribute and join Brooke on her journey. And we look forward to our next episode. And Brooke, we look forward to watching you continue to grow. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's been great.